Welcome to My 10 Sports. Glad you could join us on this July 18th, 2023 episode. It's SEC Media Day week. Not a more exciting time. Some people call it's the kickoff to college football. I think it used to be. I think college football is covered now more 24/7, 365 than it used to be. So it used to be kind of like, man, we're officially back. And we are. Am I underestimating what SEC Media Days is for the college football season or for the SEC football season in general. But I think with it being covered 24/7, 365, it doesn't have the juice it once did. But you know what? We're going to take it. It's a great week. We've gotten through the first 2 days. I mean, you've already had Brian Kelly, Jimbo Fisher, Lia Drinkowitz, Clark Lee, Hugh Freeze, Kirby Smart, and Zach Arnett already take the podium. We got 2 more days left. This will obviously be a football-heavy SEC Media Day episode. But the Kentucky Wildcats did bring home the gold from the GLOBL Jam title, 23 and under title in Toronto, Canada. I learned a lot from the Cats. I'll be honest with you. Learned a lot from the Cats over the past week in their 4 games. They were guaranteed 3, but they got the 4th one playing in the gold medal game against Canada once again. But let's get right to that before we get to SEC Media Days. Glad you could join us again. But the Wildcats, Kentucky basketball, represented the United States well, bringing home the gold in the 23 and under tournament. It was under FIBA basketball rules, international rules. Brought home the gold after going 4-0 against Germany, Canada, Africa, and beating Canada once again, like I mentioned in the gold medal game. Kentucky won every game by double digits except the first game against Germany, which is a solid team, a much older. Remember, this is the number 1 recruiting class in the country for the Cats, coming in, a freshman class, young Cats. They brought in some young guys. Some older guys like Antonio Reeves, getting him back. Trey Mitchell, the West Virginia transfer, down in the front court. That's massive. But let's get to it. In 4 games, Antonio Reeves, massive, like I said, get back, a guy that they got back, 23 points per game and shot a blistering, listen to this, 18 of 32 from deep en route to the tournament MVP honors. You can't say enough. The Indiana State transfer from last year probably didn't really live up to the billing last year. Remember, entered the draft. We said it a lot. Entered the draft. And they entered the portal for a bit. Kentucky had to fight to get him back. I mean, Cal and Kentucky only had 7 scholarship players going into the middle of June. Turned it around significantly. Outstanding job. Some of the Bob Huggins stuff actually benefited the Wildcats and the boys in Lexington. But to say this, the offense looked tremendously improved. Now, they did play with some FIBA basketball rules. The balls are a little different. The lane's a bit wider. The shot clock shorter. So that's not what it's going to be come basketball seasons, come November through March. Teams are going to make them grind out possessions, I think. But nonetheless, you could tell the Kentucky offense was different. I think a lot of that goes to their new assistant coach, John Welch, his 20 years of NBA experience. But listen to this stat right here I dug. Per hoop math, last year, Kentucky shot 36.3% of Kentucky shots last year were 2-point jump shots, the 7th highest mark nationally. In comparison, SEC champion Alabama took 2-point jumpers just 12.2% of the time. In Canada, hear me out, Kentucky clearly had made progress on that per game. They took last season. They shared the ball well and looked more like an NBA style. They took 29 more threes than they did last year. Just in this tournament in Canada, they did. You can tell they're changing it up a lot. The John Welch hire, coming over from the NBA as an assistant coach, did wonders for Kentucky. I know it's early. We're just getting into the meat of the offseason now, but the roster set. All 3 highly touted freshmen perform well, guys. DJ Wagner, Robert Dillingham, and I liked what I saw out of Reed Shepherd. I mean, I think you knew what you were going to get at DJ Wagner, knew what you were going to get with Dillingham. Didn't think I was going to get what I saw from Shepherd. And he had some excellent moments in Canada. It's early, but I do like this Cal team. I mean, I had them probably in the 8th, 9th range going into this tournament. Not that I thought the tournament would change a lot, but it did. I mean, you watch them, they played a lot of older teams. When the German team had majority 23-year-olds, a lot of professional and college players on the African, German, and Canadian teams. I mean, Andrew Wiggins played on this team one time. Charles Bediako, Alabama center, played on the Canadian team. They have some guys. So for Kentucky to go in there, kind of flex its muscles, win every game by double digits except against the German team that was significantly older than them and still won the game, I think, by 8 or 9 points. It's impressive. But I was more impressive, even if they didn't even win the gold medal, just the offense changed, man. A lot more sets, shooting three-pointers. Like I said, we mentioned it. They took 29 threes per game, 11 more than the 18 they averaged last year per game. I think some of these older guys, too. West Virginia's loss is Kentucky's game with Trey Mitchell down low in the front court. Antonio Reeves looks improved. And that's with both centers, the younger guys, a little bit injured. They didn't have their full roster. Now, I don't think they get one of the two back. I don't think they get Bradshaw or Yu-Gi-Oh! Back. I don't think they get one of those guys back. I think having foot injuries at 7 foot isn't ideal going into the season. So if they could just get one of those guys back, probably preferably Bradshaw, that would be big. So Kentucky, very impressive in Toronto. I put them in the top 4 right now in the league. It was an impressive group watching all 4 of those games. Now, I watched one live. I went back and put it on replay, recorded it, watched the other 3. But I was impressed. Cal put the ego down, went and got a solid NBA coach like John Welch, 20 years experience in the NBA, opened it up a little bit more of the modern game in the NBA where Kentucky was behind a little bit. So expect the Cats to be more of a perimeter shooting team. Look for more shots overall from beyond the arc and probably a higher percentage too. So Kentucky brings the gold home for the United States. That's awesome. If you're a Kentucky fan, you're still young, you kind of like the core nucleus of what's going on heading into the 23-24 season. So we want to talk about that. Congratulations to the Kentucky basketball team and John Calipari, gold medal winners, the 2023 GLOBL Jam in Toronto, Canada. Moving on, though, like I said, SEC Media Days. SEC Media Days, we're here. I'm going to give you my day 1 thoughts. Just go through each coach, go through my day 2 thoughts. We'll start off with Greg Sankey, but just a little tidbit I saw from the officiating. SEC lost 5 officials to the NFL this past year. I'll be interested to see how that's replaced. It's a big deal. It's not going to be talked about a lot. There's not a bunch we can go to in depth. I don't even know their names. I don't even know who we're bringing in to replace them from an SEC standpoint. But losing 5 officials, it's almost a whole crew. That's interesting. I'll be interested to see. We won't really know how that affects in the fall. I mean, they don't ever really publicly put all that stuff out. It's a conversation for another day. Just thought that was an interesting tidbit. But again, Greg Sankey on Monday led us off as he normally does at the podium. Kind of State of the Union address for the conference. Obviously, NIL was brought up. And it kind of seemed like not much has changed. He was going with the new NCAA director. They're trying to make it go through Congress. I don't know if that'll ever work, but that's where their stance was. He didn't get too much in depth with it. It seemed like every coach got a kind of a question about that. A lot of them kind of pushed it off. They're all for their players benefiting from NIL, but you can tell they don't want to get backed into a corner and say something they may regret. So NIL has been talked about, but not as much in depth as some may think. I didn't think it would be talked about as much as in depth. It's because it's SEC Media Days. What are you really going to say? These guys have about 30 minutes at the podium. They're going to be very short and just get right to the point. But again, still trying to work through Congress with an election coming up in 24. I don't know how I think we're just kicking a can down the road. I don't know how we improve it at all because the people in Congress are not going to be worried about that. They'll be worried about the 24 presidential election. So that's that. He also brought up the league's a superpower, kind of taking a shot at the Big Ten. Didn't see any potential new teams being added to the conference here in the near future. So that was an interesting take. Some people will venture say North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson, guys like that. And I'm sure it's some talks maybe in behind the scenes, but he didn't mention adding any teams in the near future after the 16 set, after Oklahoma and Texas join next year. Threw a little tidbit in there and didn't necessarily disagree with him here. And some people may, but he mentioned he didn't think the 12-team playoff starting in 24 should be conference automatic qualifiers just by winning your conference. He didn't think we should have automatic conference qualifiers, which I agree with. I think we need to get the 12 best teams. Some people may disagree with me, thinking the AAC or somebody needs a conference, needs a representative in the playoffs. One group of 5 team. It's probably going to happen anyways. But, I mean, let's just get the best 12 teams. Why not? I mean, I think 12 is honestly a little too much in the first place. I think 4 was a good number in my opinion. I've kind of gone back and forth with that right now. I'm kind of leaning towards 12, but it is what it is. I mean, it's adapt or die. We're going to go with 12. But I think we have to get the 12 best teams, not just get the Power 5, the conference champions, and then we'll get at large bids after that. I think that's ridiculous. I think we need to go with the 12 best teams and just seed them 1 through 12. No matter if that's 8 SEC teams, 8 Big Ten teams, 8 ACC teams, whatever it may be, let's just get the best 12 teams. So I agree with Greg Sankey from that standpoint. But other than that, it's really all he hit that would be worth noting. Nothing real surprising, but that's all I would take from that standpoint. But let's move on. Jimbo Fisher let us off on Monday. Jimbo Fisher would not say publicly if Bobby Petrino was going to call plays. He kind of went back later on when he was on Feinbaum or the SC Network and said he would. But from talking to people within the facilities, Bobby Petrino and everyone in that building is fully on board with Bobby Petrino calling those plays. I don't know why Jimbo Fisher went to the podium and kind of played dumb with it, or hey, we made that decision yet. He also did it with his quarterback competition. He made it seem like Connor Weigman and Max Johnson were in a quarterback competition, which is not true. Not trying to tell a guy who runs his own program it's not true, but there's a little passive aggressiveness going on right now with Jimbo Fisher and the media. I mean, I know why. He thinks they're attacking him, and he's just like he's a big time ball coach. He's a guy that has an ego just like the rest of them. I've said in staff meetings with Jimbo Fisher back in 2018 when I was at Texas A&M, he's got an ego the size of this planet. I think he may tell you that. So it's probably a little tougher for him to give the play calling duties over, and he's going to have his say in it. But Bobby Petrino, according to people in that building, he is calling the plays. Everybody over on social media just debating who will be calling the plays for Texas A&M. It's Bobby Petrino. It's not going to show up in the Miami game. It's not going to show up in the Arkansas game. To start the season, unless something goes off the rails, Bobby Petrino is going to be calling the plays for Texas A&M, and that's how it should be. And also, there's no quarterback competition. It's Connor Weigman to start the season. Not saying by the Alabama-Ole Miss game or Alabama-Tennessee game. Those are back-to-back for Texas A&M. If Weigman's struggling, I think they got solid depth. They feel comfortable maybe going with Max Johnson. I mean, a little bit of a pocket quarterback. He's going to take more sacks than Weigman because he's less athletic. But I don't think they're opposed to pulling it if it gets bad or dire. But as of right now, Bobby Petrino is calling plays in College Station, and Connor Weigman will be under center in College Station to start the 23 season. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't know why Jimbo Fisher danced around it. But for people I talked to in the building, that's no surprise to anybody. And I think they'd be baffled if anything else came out of that where it wasn't Bobby Petrino calling plays and Connor Weigman starting the season at quarterback, like I said, to open up the 2023 season for the Ags. I actually feel good about A&M's offense. I think he does too. Talking to people inside the building, they feel really good. They think the offensive line is going to be an improved unit this year. What I'm actually worried about a little bit is the defense. They finished 123rd in the country in rush defense last year. DJ Durkin's back. Now, DJ Durkin, I think the positive thing here, if you're an A&M fan, DJ Durkin had significant improvement in his second year as a defense coordinator at Ole Miss. So I could see that being the same deal in College Station for Texas A&M. I think last year he didn't let the guys really get lined up or put them in success or put guys into their best position to have their most success or put themselves to be in their best position possible. I think this year they're going to play quick, not think as much because the talent's there. Like I've been saying on the show, the talent's ultimately going to catch up to A&M sooner or later. I think it could be this year. I kind of lean towards that. My predictions will come later. I'm going to wait till fall camp comes around. Jake Crane brought it up. I don't know why people make predictions right now. I want to see what happens in fall camp. So I'm going to be one of the later predictions. So keep tabs on that. But I think leadership. You can tell the leadership. Guys like McKinley Jackson. You can tell there's some leadership on this Texas A&M team. I kind of like Bryce Foster. You can tell a lot better leadership on this year's team. The guys that transferred out, 2 or 3 of them are already off the team. Their next school. The guys that have transferred out at Texas A&M, Chris Marshall left Ole Miss. The Bowie kid who transferred to Georgia, he's going. They didn't recruit high character guys really in that 21 class. That was the number 1 ranked class of all time. That's where a lot of teams miss. It doesn't matter about their ability. If you, like Kirby Smart said it today, and we'll get to it in a minute. We recruit guys and we want people inside our building that are selfless people and love football. That's simple. It's almost too simple. But for some reason, we don't follow it. I don't know why, but we don't. People who love football and selfless individuals who are willing to do anything to win and put themselves secondary, even if it may not be best for them in that situation. Bill Belichick said it a lot before. That's really what I got from A&M. I don't know what Jimbo Fisher danced around some of those questions. Bobby Petrino's calling offensive plays to start the season. Connor Weigman's going to start. I like the leadership of this team. I like the offense. And I think the defense could be improved if DJ Durkin simplifies it and just lets his athletes go play because the talent on the defense, especially on that defensive line, is there. Moving on to LSU, Brian Kelly and the boys rolled into Nashville for day 1 SEC Media Days. He brought Jaden Daniels, Josh Williams, and Mekhi Wingo to him. Jaden Daniels just sounds like a mature kid. I like the way he has handled his business. But LSU, what I really respect about them coming into this week, there was no entitlement. They won the SEC West in Brian Kelly's first year. You could tell they felt like they left a little bit of meat on the bone. Didn't finish the way they did. They ended the year with a loss to Texas A&M, who finished last in the SEC West. They didn't perform up to their standard against Georgia. Finished with 4 losses. You could feel like an underwhelming SEC West champ. And Brian Kelly admits, hey, we're still trying to catch up to Georgia and Alabama. We're not the premier program in the SEC West right now. That's what Alabama. They've been a consistent. They're already up there. We're trying to catch them and be that consistent force that they have been for years. And I appreciate him saying that. I think most people are like, man, humble Brian Kelly. And I know some of that's coach talk, whatever, but I think they genuinely understand that. They know, hey, we beat them on a last-second play last year, went for 2, walked them off. You know what? Anybody can do anything once. I mean, even a blind squirrel can find a nut every now and then. A broken clock's right twice a day. Let's see what you can do back-to-back. Let's see what you can do back-to-back. I'm not challenging LSU. I think they challenged themselves to do that in the offseason. So you like seeing that. But you did notice Brian Kelly's still a bit concerned about that secondary. You can tell he's a bit concerned about that secondary still. You can tell lost 3 starters. Again, brought in a transfer portal heavy class to be in the secondary. That's a communication. That's a communication position. That's guys checking. Hey, overhead. You got the coverage. If you haven't played a lot together, it's tough. Not saying it can't be done, but again, if you're overhauling one position group with portal entries, maybe Auburn a little bit, i.e. offensive line, a group that's got to have some cohesiveness, could be an issue maybe be an issue in my opinion right there. And he admitted it. Brian Kelly issued. He's concerned about that. But I do think guys like Ovi Ogufo, Savion Jones, and Harold Perkins, when they line him up on the edge on third down, I think a pass rush, or if Mason Smith gets some interior pass rush, could help take a load off the secondary. If they get more of a pass rush, collapse the pocket on the inside, you ask any quarterback, they don't want their feet stepping on. They don't want their feet getting stepped on. If Mason Smith can help that, not only in the run game, but provide an interior pass rush along with the guys on the edges, I just admit, watch out. That's going to help the secondary. I guarantee it. So Brian Kelly, rightfully so, has some concerns in his secondary. Another portal class coming in there, some guys that hadn't played together. But they'll get some time in fall camp. But again, a pass rush is the secondary's best friend. I think that could be a big deal for LSU this year. But like I said, LSU, I like where they're at this year. They're a confident team, but they know they haven't arrived yet. Moving on to Missouri. Eli Drinkowitz and the boys, they rolled in. Not as much. Eli Drinkowitz is usually good for a joke or two. He kind of seemed like he settled it in. It's all in the Feinbaum Network, SEC Network. He kind of wanted to just let the kids, his kids, kind of be the face of it this year in Nashville. I think he kind of wants to be like Lane Kiffin and have the one jokes off, but sometimes these jokes just don't land. Maybe that's just me. I just don't get his sense of humor. But he did say the quarterback job's not 100%. Brady Cook is not QB1 right now, fighting off Jake Garcia and Sam Horn. Because remember, Brady Cook was out in the spring, had labrum surgery. So that gave Miami transfer Jake Garcia and Sam Horn a chance to go establish themselves in that role. I think there's a little bit of a quiet confidence with Missouri. They got some guys back on defense, 8-9 starters. Missouri's got a chance. I think Drinkwitz knows this year, hey, there's no goofing around this year. No goofing around. I'm in my 4th year. We need to go to the postseason. We need to go to the postseason. I kind of like Missouri after there was it's kind of like they were all business. Like, hey, I'm not coming here to joke this year. I'm going to let it be all in the kids. I support them. And I like where our team's at with some veterans on defense. If we can just get the quarterback situation settled, because they have weapons on the outside. Mookie Cooper, Luther Burden, Theo Weiss. They got guys on the outside. That quarterback position is just going to have to get settled. And I think Drink knows that because he's an offensive guy. He's a quarterback guy. So if that's not getting situated in year 4, that's on him. So I kind of got the vibe from Missouri. They came with a more business-like approach this year. And I can respect that. And that was it from the first day of SEC Media Day. So you had Texas A&M. First day, Greg Sankey leading off. Always on the first day, he leads off. State of the Union for the SEC. And they always have 3 coaches in the SEC for the first day, which is Texas A&M's Jimbo Fisher, LSU's Brian Kelly, and we just talked about it, Missouri's Eli Drinkowitz. Let's get into today's action. Vanderbilt, Clark Lee could have probably walked to Nobney over there for the SEC Media Days. But Clark Lee received a contract extension right before SEC media days. He even admitted, I don't think I was really qualified for that because they haven't made the postseason in 3 years yet. Very similar to Missouri, though, at Vanderbilt for me, though. Just kind of a quiet confidence, if you want to be honest with me. Just looking at my notes here, yeah, they said everything right. They're getting some facility upgrades, but you can tell, even talking to the kids, the Will Shepherd, the receiver, it's kind of their do-all, everything guy on offense, kind of said, hey, like, we're getting these facilities, but we need to start winning. So, again, kind of like Missouri, just kind of mature group. Clark Lee's an alum. You could tell he totally understood that, hey, we need to get the postseason. 5-7, which we did last year. We had good wins against Florida and Kentucky, but that's not good enough. We want to be the best program in the country. And people laugh about that, but what do you want the guy to say? We want to be the best 5-7, 6-6, 7-5 team. Of course he wants to be the best team in the country. Why do anything if you don't want to go be the best? It's like Nick Saban says, if you're a janitor, go be the best janitor. If you're a car salesman, go be the best car salesman out there. If you're the best sports agent, go be the best sports agent. If you're the best football coach, if you're a football coach, go be the best football coach. Go be the best at what you can do. And I appreciate that. Some people think that's corny from Clark Lee, but I think he is a great fit. Extension may be a little too early because he hasn't made a postseason yet. But really, what's the expectations for Vandy? We need to lay the ground in a world that everybody wants to fire coaches in 2 or 3 years. I appreciate Vandy and give you a round of applause, give you a little golf clap right there for investing time in your alumni and your football coach, Clark Lee. So I like Vandy, quiet confidence with them. I think if Vandy can start 5-1 or 4-2, I think they have a chance to get to 6. They need to start off 4-1, 5-2. 4-2, 5-1, heading into that Kentucky game. They need to be there. They need to beat Wake Forest. They need to beat Hawaii in week 0. I think that's where they need to be. 4-2, 5-1, heading in. 5-1, 4-2, heading into week 6 or week 7, I should say. But I like Vanderbilt's attitude heading in to the 23 season. Again, I think Vanderbilt, Missouri, I keep saying that. They just kind of reminded me of each other a little bit. Just kind of like, hey, a quiet confidence. We're not here throwing jokes around like Eli Drinkwitz normally does. Clark Lee, a more serious guy in general. But I like where Vanderbilt's heading right there. Georgia, Kirby Smart, the back-to-back defending national champs, got on the stage today. I mean, if you're looking for some fireworks, Kirby Smart yelling at media members or defending their off-the-field stuff with the speeding, car racing stuff, you weren't going to get it. You weren't going to get it, and you probably would have been very disappointed, which I wasn't because I'm all about the ball talk. I want to talk about football. And I get it. It's a sensitive situation. You had 2 people within the program pass away, so we got to be sensitive with that. But Georgia does not seem to be real worried about 3-peating. They're taking it, Kirby Smart said 24 hours at a time. We're just worried about the next 24 hours getting better. Better never rest is what he said was his quote. Some people didn't understand that, but they're always constantly talking about getting better. They have a lot of skull sessions this summer. If you don't know what that is, that's mixing up groups, mixing up the DBs, offensive linemen, tight ends, receivers, quarterbacks, mixing up groups that aren't normally with one another on a regular basis. Just kind of talking about personal lives, pulling back the layers, being vulnerable, talking about Kamari Lassiter, his mom sleeping on the couch, working multiple jobs to put him in the best school district to set him up for success. Kirby didn't know that about it. And he's like, I've kind of taken back a little bit from the defense and offense, let my coaches coach. Because, I mean, they have there's a good retention rate for Georgia. They had all their coaches back except really Todd Monken for the most part. I mean, is that it? Yeah, Todd Monken, really. Everybody else is back. A lot of Georgia guys back, a lot of Georgia alums. I didn't really realize that until they had that on staff, till he said that. But you could just tell Georgia's more of like the motivation. I mean, they were doing an all study on the All Blacks New Zealand rugby team. There's a Netflix show on it. I watch it. It's great. They're a traditional power in the New Zealand rugby league. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's called All Blacks. How he's studying how they just perform every day showing up. It doesn't matter what we did the last year or last 2 years. We just need to show up and come be our best. So motivation, complacency, is going to be their biggest battle heading into the season. I mean, he even mentioned there's a potential ongoing quarterback battle. I don't think there is, but he thinks there is between Carson Beck, Brock Vandergriff, and Gunnar Stockton. He's complimentary about all 3 of them. I think he's going to be Carson Beck. I think he's going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league. But, again, he's putting everybody on notice. Everybody, there's no safe job. It's competition, boys. You better be working your tail off in the summer. You better get ready for fall camp. And also the thing that stood out to me a little bit, it seemed like a very mature but quiet group. Guys like Cedric Van Pran, Brock Bowers, seems like you can't get 3 or 4 words out of the kid. Nothing wrong with that. Just a quiet, confident group. Cedric Van Pran, Burger, as you call him, he's from New Orleans. I remember recruiting him in my time. Good player, good center prospect. But he mentioned, hey, like last year, the seniors held us accountable. We wanted to send the seniors out the right way the last 2 years. He said, well, now we're those seniors. So we need to teach the underclassmen, hey, this is the standard that we're setting. He's like, and hopefully they take it with them. Hey, they want to send us out the right way because we sent out the last 2 senior classes the right way. Very mature statement. A very mature statement. It's a mature but quiet Georgia team. I'm interested to see if there's any guys that have some, on their shoulder, like some stuff about them. Like, hey, if stuff's going wrong, we're in Knoxville right off the bat. Tennessee's up 14-0. Is there anybody that's going to get in somebody's face? Guys, let's go. Let's turn it up a notch. You got to have that on your team. You got to have your quiet leaders, your guys that lead by example, but also you got to have your vocal guys. I'm sure Georgia does have that, but I think there are 3 guys they sent to SEC Media Days are not those guys. Maybe Cedric Van Pran a little bit, but I know guys like Brock Bowers, not first-year starting quarterback. It's tough to just totally expect that. So I think that's something that I may be looking into maybe a little bit too much, but maybe not. I kind of like what my thought process is on that. I do think, again, Georgia still goes 12-0. Winning the national championship, I can't predict that. I don't know who they'll be playing in the SEC championship or who they'll be playing in the semis or the national championship. But they may need to have a little bit of a guy that has some, lack of a better word, some shit about him. Like, hey, guys, we need to get it going if we're down big at half, like I just mentioned. I mean, it's one thing to be a lead by example guy in the summer workouts, but when, hey, the crap's hitting the fan, we need somebody to go turn it up and get people focused. I think Georgia's had that the last 2 years with their senior class. And this is their COVID baby class. So Kirby mentioned it. He's like, we didn't really get a good chance. We didn't get them on campus for OVs because of COVID. So we signed a lot of these guys not knowing a ton about him. And they hit on a lot of them because Georgia hadn't had a lot of transfers. But also, you don't really know if these guys are vocal leaders that are going to be like, hey, we got to get going, guys. Stuff like that. So I didn't really think about that till hearing those interviews today. Kirby saying it. So that'll be an interesting take when something does inevitably inevitably something negative happens during the season for them. Because it is. I still think they'll go 12-0, but I think inevitably the Missouri game, they're down 10 in the fourth quarter last year in Missouri and Como. Something had to get stepped up. I mean, something had to happen. If I remember right, I think it was Tay Crowder going off on somebody for missing an assignment on defense that led to a Missouri touchdown on the sideline, going off on him. I think Glenn Schumann had to take the kid by the around the shoulder, like, hey, come on, let's talk. You got to have some of those guys to keep people in check, though. I'm interested to see if Georgia has that. And then the final thing, Kirby, I don't know why he's reaching on this. I mean, I know he's not going to say their schedule's bad, but he challenged people to come play their schedule, which I know he is social media. He's probably hearing about everybody's bashing their 2023 schedule, which it's not great. And to be fair, it's not their fault. The SEC made them reschedule their Oklahoma game. So I don't think it's their fault. But let's don't act like you're going to go play some tough schedule there, Coach Smart. That's kind of where I'm. And again, just kind of, hey, I think we're playing the SEC. It's a tough schedule. I wouldn't challenge people to come play it because you have probably arguably the easiest schedule in the SEC. That kind of stuck out to me a little bit. You could tell that's bothering him a little bit. But it is what it is. He's just kind of defending his program or the back-to-back champs who you challenge and saying we don't have an easy schedule. Well, Coach, it's a very easy schedule that's going to be able to be navigated. If that's even a word. I mean, it's going to be easy to navigate that schedule is what I'm trying to tell you. Let's call a spade a spade. But Georgia, that's the one thing I took about them. Are they going to have some vocal leaders this year is where I'm kind of questioning about them. But again, Georgia should be the leader in the clubhouse right now to go win the national championship. They got the talent. They got the prerequisite, but they need some of those vocal leaders. And remember, this is that COVID baby class. They didn't always get to peel those layers back. Get them on campus. Need some vocal leaders, I think, to ultimately win a national championship. But that's Georgia. Heading over, Hugh Freeze back in the SEC, baby. Auburn was on the podium today. Auburn's head coach, Hugh Freeze. I thought he'd be a little bit more interesting, and that's not bad. You don't want to be raising eyebrows at SEC Media Days your first time back. But Freeze seems to be tempering expectations a little bit. The roster wasn't great from the last 2 head coaches, just not getting it done in recruiting between Gus Malzahn and Brian Harsin, not leaving with a lot. So they brought in a lot of portal guys. I mentioned the offensive line earlier. Guys like Dylan Wade coming over. They're going to have 3 or 4 starters that are transfers. It's another cohesive position that guys need time to gel together, from combination blocks, duo blocks, stuff like that. You need time to gel. So it'll be interesting bringing that many portal guys. He stated straight up, went opposite of the Jimbo Fisher route. He straight up said Philip Montgomery will be calling plays this year. Hugh Freeze said he felt like he struggled a little bit at Liberty calling plays, so he's going to turn that over and just be the CEO, head coach. Optimistic with the quarterback room with Peyton Thorne coming over from Michigan State. Obviously, Robbie Ashford from last year. I think he feels good about that. Honestly, though, wish we would have got a little bit more from Coach Freeze. I just can't get a vibe from him because he hasn't been in the league so long. I don't remember listening. I can't remember the last time I listened to a press conference of his till recently. Until the last time he was probably at Ole Miss was the last time I did. But just kind of it seems like he's tempering expectations. But I think with Auburn's schedule, Auburn should get 7 or 8 wins. Not trying to put them under any pressure. 6-6 bad season. Let's go get rid of Hugh Freeze. Not saying that. But I think he's kind of tempering like, hey, may not be as good as we thought. I tried to improve the roster since December until about May as good as I can. 7 wins is good. So but that's Hugh Freeze. He's not going to go out there and be overly optimistic. So I think he kind of tempered expectations, but I fully expect Auburn. I feel about the same as I did with Auburn. Some people I saw tweeting like, man, he didn't feel good about this, or guys I talked to in the industry. He sounded like he went real high on his team this year. I think that's just him. Was expecting a little more, but didn't even feel like I got a bunch out of the players that came from Auburn as the representatives either. But Auburn still expect them 7-8, finish 4th or 5th in the league. Again, my predictions will not come out until end of fall camp. Just giving you a heads up there. And then the last one, Mississippi State, Zach Arnett. The only undefeated coach and the only coach that is willing to name a starter at the quarterback position in Will Rogers is Zach Arnett. First time taking the podium there at SEC Media Days. Again, he's undefeated. The only coach that could step up this year at 1 through 14 that can say he's not lost a game yet. But again, he named Will Rogers. I know they brought in Mike Wright from Vanderbilt. He said for sure, though, Will Rogers is their guy. They may have some packages for Mike Wright, which I think that's a good idea for new OC Kevin Barbier's first year. But I left really impressed with Zach Arnett. I would say through the first 2 days, the guy I'm most impressed with would be Zach Arnett. And then probably 2A, 2B, probably Kirby Smart, the way he handled all that situation up at the podium. And then Eli Drinkwitz not coming up and cracking jokes. I think he knows year 4 is a real serious, hey, the position that's struggling has been holding us back is the position I supposedly specialize in. So that's what I would think. But getting back to Zach Arnett, Mississippi State, it's a new job. I've not heard him talk a lot. Obviously, Mike Leach didn't let the coordinators talk a lot. You remember his opening press conference, and he honored Mike Leach opening up, said he probably couldn't go just the 7 words that Mike Leach set the record for last year for having the shortest press conference by far of any other coach. But he carried himself with poise. I'm looking at my notes here. Poise, seemed prepared, and answered every question with confidence. I loved it. He kind of has me sold right now. Again, I'm not saying Mississippi State's going to go win the West this year. I think they'll be a solid 6-7 win team this year. But I think people are forgetting it's just a first-time head coach, but there's a lot of familiarity on the defensive side. They got a lot of guys back on that defensive side. I think if Mike Leach was back, God rest his soul, I think Mississippi State may be a preseason top 25 team with 11 or 12 starters back. I think people are just, Zach Arnett, like new coach. There'll be some transition, which there is. He's a new coach for the first time. But I think this is a different situation than some guy coming into the program that has not been around the program ever. Zach Arnett's been in the program since Mike Leach has been there. So I think there's a little bit more of a familiarity around the program where it's not going to be as tough as a transition as some think. And don't get me wrong, there is going to be a game where you can break. Zach Arnett, what are you doing as a head coach? Because you're not ready to be a head coach until you get that opportunity, until a little baptism by fire, until you're thrown into the water, sink or swim type thing. But man, I was impressed with that guy's poise, confidence. He's real comfortable in his own shoes. So tip of the cap, golf clap to you, Coach Arnett. Great job. I left very impressed with Zach Arnett today. Again, he has been my most impressive coach so far in the first 2 days of the SEC. And again, I think if Mike Leach was back, again, God rest his soul, I think Mississippi State would be picked in the 4th range, but I think you're going to see them be picked 6th or 7th come the end of Thursday when the media puts their SEC predictions out from the SEC West. But so that's it from the first 2 days, but just previewing. I know I did a little bit about a week ago for Wednesday and Thursday's action SEC Media Days. Nick Saban, 10:05 tomorrow, Alabama and his Crimson Tide team led by J.C. Latham, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Dallas Turner will be in Nashville They'll lead off the day tomorrow. Alabama flying under the radar. I'm actually excited to hear about them tomorrow. I mean, it's been a quiet summer. It's been a quiet summer in Tuscaloosa. I hadn't heard a lot. Really hadn't heard a lot since Tyler Buckner came in after the spring. 2 new coordinators, Tommy Rees on offense, Kevin Steele back in Tuscaloosa for another 10 years, third tenure in Tuscaloosa. I'm excited to hear what Nick Saban has. I think he's going to have a lot of quote-unquote rat poison. Not rat poison, the opposite of rat poison. Yeah, still wouldn't surprise me if Alabama's picked to win the West at the end of Thursday, but it wouldn't shock me if LSU. Again, I think this is the most open the SEC West has been in a while. I'm interested to hear what Nick's going to say, what Coach Saban's going to say about his 2 new coordinators, the quarterback position. Just overall, man, I'm fired up. Last year, Alabama was a little boring. I mean, you had Bryce Young coming back, Will Anderson. You kind of like, here we go. It's kind of like Alabama's already crowned the preseason national champs going into last year. But this year, I think this is a team's going to have a chip on their shoulder. I'm interested to see what guys like J.C. Latham say, Kool-Aid say, and then obviously Dallas Turner. I think you could get some player quotes tomorrow from Alabama. Not bulletin board material for other teams, but I think you could see a team with a little bit of chip on that shoulder tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. Be drinking my coffee, eat my banana bread. I'll be looking forward to that one. So Alabama leading us off at 10:05. Arkansas at 11:30 a.m. Sam Pittman with defensive end Landon Jackson, quarterback KJ Jefferson, and running back Raheem Rocket Sanders. I'm interested to see how he addresses bringing Dan Enos back to Arkansas, Travis Williams, Marcus Woodson being the new co-DCs. Interested to see how KJ Jefferson's developing under Dan Enos. I'm one that think he regresses. I mean, obviously, Sam Pittman's not going to come out and say that, but I think you can read between the lines a little bit to see how comfortable he is. Sam Pittman, usually an overly optimistic guy, but I think he'll shoot you straight a little bit. So I'm interested to see the coordinators, because I think the 2 coordinators hires he just had between Dan Enos, Travis Williams, and co-DC Marcus Woodson. I think these are make or break hires for Sam Pittman. And people may call me crazy that it's early. We're only going into year 4 for Sam Pittman. But again, you're probably stuck with these guys for a year or 2. So I think if these guys don't develop some of these prospects, I think he cut some X's and O's schematic advantages with Barry Odom. I know Barry Odom left to go take the head coaching job at UNLV. I think more of their defensive staff now is a little bit more of a recruiting staff than it is in a schematic staff. It's going to put some guys in their best position to be themselves and let the players play. Maybe a little overcomplicated. And I've been around Travis Williams. Those guys are going to play hard. They're going to play with their hair on fire. It's his first time being a DC in the SEC. I know he coached at Auburn, inside linebackers in the SEC, but I think this could be an adjustment period for him. So I think these 2 – people are calling me crazy, but I think those 2 new coordinator hires, or I should say 3, are going to be make or break for Sam Pittman's ultimate tenure in Arkansas. I should say in Fayetteville at Arkansas. But again, I'm interested to see that. Florida, 2 p.m., Billy Napier bringing offensive lineman Kingsley Ugakin, defensive back Jason Marshall Jr., and then wide receiver Ricky Purcell. I'm interested to see what Billy's going to say. Coach Napier has kind of been dragged. They're recruiting well now. Still think some of the guys they're taking Georgia wouldn't take. Hear that from me, stuff I've gathered. But I'll be interested to see, does he come out defensive? I don't really think that's his personality. I think he trusts his process. So I'm interested to see how he asks some of these questions, answer some of these questions, because guys are inevitably going to be like, hey, people are doubting you. Do you feel like you're on the hot seat going into year 2? Do you feel like you're going to have year 2 or 3? Like, your schedule's tough. Like, do you feel like you have to win one of the games, just the first 3 games at Utah or Tennessee? How is your team going to handle starting 1 and 2? I think he's going to be asked a lot of negative questions, like about his program. He's going to be there having to defend his program. So I'm excited to hear that from Billy Napier. And then finally at 3:25, Kentucky's Mark Stoops, offensive lineman Eli Cox, defensive lineman Octavius Oxidine, and linebacker I like a lot, J.J. Weaver. Mark Stoops usually takes a little jab at somebody. I know he's not a huge fan of Shane Beamer, but maybe he throws something there. But I think Mark Stoops is going to be asked about the transition with Liam Cohen coming back after a year with the LA Rams. How's Devin Leary, the new quarterback coming from NC State, transitioning with Liam Cohen? And is the big blue wall, the offensive line, is they taking that next step? If guys like Cortland Ford, Marquise Cox, guys they brought into the portal, is that cohesiveness developing over the summer? Because I think it's going to be an improved unit. I'm looking forward to him telling that. I think a lot of questions for Mark Stoops tomorrow will be directed in the offensive direction right there, or directed the offense's way. So it'll be interesting in hearing that from that standpoint. And then moving to Thursday, July 20th, Ole Miss's Lane Kiffin will lead us off at 10:05 with his players, defensive end Cedric Johnson, running back Quinshon Judkins, and cornerback DeAndre Prince, who feels like he's been there forever. Kiffin, he's always good for a good quote. So Kiffin will be fun. I'm interested with him. How's Jackson Dart? I've heard he is transitioned awesome. I think bringing in Walker Howard and Spencer Sanders has been tremendous and upped his game. Apparently, he's living in the facility over there. I'm excited for Jackson Dart. I think KJ Jefferson regresses. I think Jackson Dart takes a big step. Second year under Lane Kiffin. And then how's Pete Golden doing? Left Alabama, defensive coordinator. After Chris Partridge left, are they going to be a little bit more aggressive? Because I think they're going to have to force some more turnovers this year because I don't think they have the defensive personnel. I'm interested to see how Lane Kiffin addresses the Jackson Dart and Pete Golden situations. I'm looking forward to that. Then South Carolina at 11 a.m., Shane Beamer and the boys, defensive lineman Tonka Hemingway, punter Kai Kroger, and then quarterback Spencer Rattler will be with him in Nashville. I'm interested to see how Spencer Rattler is adjusting with the new OC Dowell Loggins. That's one of my main things. How's that offensive line unit going? Similar to Kentucky. Like I say all the time in this show, I think those two teams, South Carolina and Kentucky, are fighting for that third and fourth spot. I think it's ultimately going to come down to who has the better offensive line because that's going to impact both quarterbacks. I like Devin Leary and I like Spencer Rattler, but whoever has that best offensive line between Kentucky's offensive line and South Carolina's offensive line, I think is going to get that third spot behind Georgia and Tennessee. I'm looking forward to how he answers those. The defensive secondary is another question. I just don't think they can afford to keep winning 2 games off special teams with Pete Limbo kind of carrying them a little bit. So that offensive line is going to have to develop and any running back step up besides Juju McDowell in the backfield. I think those are big questions I'm looking forward to hearing Shane Beamer answer on Thursday. And then finally, short drive over from Knoxville, 1 o'clock to wrap up the 2023 SEC Media Days. Josh Heupel will be in town along with quarterback Joe Milton, defensive lineman Amari Thomas, and tight end Jacob Warren. Heupel, I'm interested to see how they take on the target on his back. They're going to be the hunted this year. They're going to be circled on games. They're going to be circled on Alabama's schedule. They're going to be circled on really everybody else is in the East. South Carolina beat them last year, but they're going to be circled on that game for the Gamecocks because no one's predicting them to go into Knoxville and win this year. They're going to be circled on Kentucky's schedule, A&M's schedule, everyone's schedule. Tennessee's not going to sneak up on anybody. Not that they snuck up on anybody last year. They earned it. They played great offense, were opportunistic on defense last year. But they really have a target on their back this year. People are looking forward to playing them. So I'll be interested to see that. How is Joe Milton progressing? Is in the defense improved? Because they got a lot of veterans on that defense, especially in the secondary. How is that with Tim Banks? How is that defense taking that next step? Not really from giving up yards, but being better on third down and creating more turnovers. Because with an offense that Josh Heupel runs, the defense is always going to take a little bit of a step back. But you got to be able to get off the field on third down and create turnovers to get the ball back to your offense. So I'm interested to see how that defense is taking the next step or how they're planning to take the next step of that defense. But that's a little preview of Wednesday and Thursday. Again, Wednesday, Alabama with Nick Saban, Arkansas with Sam Pittman, Florida with Billy Napier, Kentucky with Mark Stoops tomorrow. Then Thursday, wrapping it up again. Last day SEC Media Days, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, South Carolina, Shane Beamer, and then Josh Heupel in Tennessee will be there to close it out. But I know it's a shorter episode. We've been going a little bit of an hour, but just wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of the meat and potatoes of the 2023 SEC Media Days. I'll be putting out on social media my next 2 days my thoughts from my phone. We will not have a Thursday episode. I'll be out of town. Last time I'm out of town, except for a work event in the middle of August. But we'll still get this episode to you. But after this, we'll be going strong. We'll be going Mondays and Thursdays heading into the season. We're almost there, guys. We're almost there. We just got to finish this month. July is the only month. This is the last month with no football. At the end of August, we get football. Fall camp starts at the beginning of August. We'll have a ton of updates. It's here, guys. It is here. I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mock 10 Sports. I hope you have a great rest of your week.